What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today I'm here to review the Valyrian Steel Longclaw, King in the North edition. As a big Game of Thrones fan and Jon Snow fan, this was a prop that I was eyeing for a while. I mean, I missed the previous edition because I didn't actually know Valyrian Steel existed as a company at the time they were doing the run, but once I saw the King in the North edition, I was just waiting for the right time and the opportunity to jump on it. Well, spoiler alert, I did, and I don't regret it one bit. I almost went for the stainless steel version, which I'm sure is a great prop too, but the diehard collector in me decided to go for the Damascus steel version for ultimate authenticity. In this review, I'm going to touch on everything you need to know about the sword so you can decide whether it's right for you or not. The King in the North edition of Longclaw retails for $700 from Valyrian Steel. And that's the company Valyrian Steel, not actual Valyrian Steel that can slay White Walkers. With shipping, you'll pay around $725, but in my opinion, it's well worth it provided you're a huge Game of Thrones fan, you of course like Jon Snow, and you're a collector with room to dedicate to the display of the sword. The King in the North edition is not the first edition of the Longclaw we know from the show. There was a previous run of 500, and from my understanding, Valyrian Steel then came back and opened up a run of 1,500 more with the label of King in the North. This King in the North edition is in fact limited to 1,500 pieces, and who knows if another Damascus Longclaw will be made or not. I'm not sure they shipped them in order, but mine arrived over a month ago and was numbered 1433, so I can't say how low the stock is actually running at this point. Now, you may have seen that there's a stainless steel version of this sword like I mentioned. It's seemingly manufactured on a continual basis and is not limited edition. The stainless steel version is going to be shinier than this Damascus version, because with this Damascus version you're going to see what I would call grooves in the blade. You'll see also lines of sorts that Damascus steel is known for, often referred to as a flowing water type of look. According to the Valyrian Steel website, Damascus steel is a blend of two types of carbon steel and is very valuable, which is why the King in the North edition is that much more desirable as a collector. The construction feels awesome in hand and the blade is beautiful, especially after you oil it down with whatever your choice of oil is. On that note, one other important factor here is that the King in the North edition will require some maintenance since it's Damascus. Damascus steel can rust, so you need to make sure that you oil or wax the sword down somewhat regularly to ensure no rusting occurs. I'm by no means a sword expert, but I've been told once every few months will probably do the trick. I found myself oiling it down about every week or two just to be safe, but that's entirely up to you how much you want to do it. I'll leave a link to the Valyrian Steel post about sword maintenance in the description below, as well as the oil and gloves I use, which have worked great thus far. Based on the information I've seen, I would advise to not touch the sword without gloves on because the blade could eventually rust. Again, I'm not an expert on Damascus steel or swords, this is just what I've been told and seen from reliable sources. As for my opinion on the sword, I love it, and I feel like it's damn near perfect. I love the construction. It feels substantial in your hand, but not too heavy. It feels like you could swing it around and go into battle with it, although I wouldn't recommend it. The sword is gripped with genuine leather that feels very soft in hand. It's one of those props that feels like you're holding something truly awesome and immersive. One of those props that makes you feel giddy with excitement as a fan. The pommel, I think, looks very good. It's painted in a rough sort of way that gives the sword a bit of a character to it, and it feels raw and also high-end at the same time. The gems inside the wolf eyes are actually quite shiny and do a nice job making the sword feel like it's a piece of luxury of war in the world of Westeros, if that makes sense. I think the paint job is actually pretty good. I'm very happy with it. I also love the plaque that comes with the sword. It's made of silkscreen wood with a silver finish that looks absolutely awesome. I mean, the Stark sigil looks beautiful and very metallic, and the two pins that hold up the sword are also really cool looking. Instructions are included that explain how best to set up the plaque, but once you do, it looks awesome. It's pretty easy to install for the most part, and I think the plaque is truly excellent and a great perk of buying this sword. The plaque that's included with other versions is typically a Night's Watch plaque, which is cool, but not as cool as the Stark one in my opinion. The last thing to touch on before I show off the sword in a live demonstration is packaging. This may not be all that important to some, but to me it is when you drop this much on a collector's piece. I think the packaging is solid. I wouldn't say it's amazing, it feels fairly light, but the box art looks really cool, which helps, the aesthetics of the packaging overall. It also is shipped inside an outer brown box that helps protect the collector's value of the original packaging, which is really important. Alright, so now I'm going to do a live demonstration of the sword in real time so you can get an even better idea of what it looks like. Let's take a look. All right, guys, it's time for the live demonstration part of the video. And for this part of the video, I'm just going to kind of, show you the sword, talk about it a little bit, show the packaging and a couple other things, reiterate a little bit of what I've said, and just talk in a little bit more detail. This is almost like adding an unboxing part to the review, which I think people like. People like to see the product in real time. So let's go ahead and do that after I just show you the packaging real quick. So I'm not going to be able to get this whole thing in frame at once, I don't think. So you can see the packaging here. As I mentioned, it's pretty light, but it looks really great. As you can see here, they have sort of a description about the product itself, a little bit about Jon Snow and kind of what's going on with the King in the North there at the time. And you can see in the bottom here, the Game of Thrones, the Longclaw King in the North edition. You got the Game of Thrones logo on the side. Very nice packaging overall. Like I said, very lightweight, but protects the sword well because it's shipped in a double box with a brown box over top of it. And yeah, this is really important to me. Like I said, the packaging is really important because I like to keep that for the collector's, collector's sake in me. So I also mentioned, I didn't show this in the video, but microfiber cloth is what I've been using to wipe the sword down. Something soft, something light that can hold the oil I'm using and then kind of be soft on the sword and gentle so I don't scratch it. This is the oil I've been using. I'm not exactly sure the name of it. It's like a Japanese oil of some kind. And I got it on Amazon, but I'll leave the link in the description for you guys for that. I just spray some on the cloth, wipe it down. I've been doing it probably about once a week, once every other week, like I mentioned. So I think that's really important. There are lots of other ways you can do it. Valyrian Steel and the link I'm going to provide in the description offers some sword maintenance guidelines. You can use Renaissance wax. You can use some other different types of oils. Anything that prevents rusting and doesn't, diminish the Damascus effects of the sword. So you don't want that, the Damascus look. So here's what you wanted to see. Longclaw. This thing is a beauty. As you saw in the video, it has the edition number right in the middle there. Mine's number 1433. It has Jon Snow, or sort of Jon Snow, and then it has Longclaw, and then it has like the product number, then it has a 1433, and then it says made in China right below that. So if you saw in the video, what you're seeing sometimes is little dust particles. That's from these gloves. I'd much rather have that than I would have rusting or anything like that on the sword. So you have to be really careful with that, because I think with this type of sword, you got to be careful not to get any fingerprints or get any sort of grease or sweat on the sword, which is really important not to do. So like I said, I'm not a sword expert, I'm not a Damascus expert, but I've been talking to people in the know that know this type of thing that I trust, also sources online that I've researched pretty extensively, and they said don't let people touch it. Don't get too excited about holding it in your hands without gloves on. So I've always held it with gloves on. I'm very careful with it. So as you can see, the blade, it has that Damascus look to it. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on camera, but in some of the shots I showed you, you can see that flowing water look that I was mentioning. That's most present in the middle of the blade, like right in the groove in there. You can also see it on the outer parts of the blade as well, but like I said, it's most noticeable in the middle there. So you can see here, like I mentioned, the leather is lined. It has like a little line right in the middle of it here. It's very nice. You can tell it's genuine leather. You can tell that it's just very nice to hold in your hand. Like I said, when you hold this sword in your hand, it feels like a legitimate, genuine prop. You feel like you're holding Jon Snow's sword. Like you're in Westeros, you have Jon Snow's sword somehow. Maybe he lets you borrow it because you're Tormund or you're his friend or something, and you got to hold it for a second. The pommel, it is gritty, like I mentioned. It has that sort of raw look, but it also gives that sort of rare, like king look as well, if that makes sense. Even though Jon had this sword when he wasn't king too, but the pommel looks sort of like gritty, but also battle worn at the same time, which I really, really like. You can see the gems there, like I showed you guys some shots of. They're fairly bright. They look really cool, actually. So, and the paint job, like I said, is a little gritty and rough, but I like it like that. So you could also see in the prop, in the real prop, it's probably not quite this gritty, but I like it like this, and I think it looks really good. So with this, I was just blown away by it. The second I opened it, I'm like, this is one of the nicest props I own. Like I said, it feels so legitimate, so accurate. So this is just one that I would highly recommend. Like I said, I'm not a sword expert, so I don't know if there's others out there that might want to make a custom one or other makers that make one as legit. But this is a fully licensed by HBO, by Game of Thrones, Longclaw replica. So this, as a collector, that's something I really value. I like having that fully licensed type thing where I can have a prop that I know is licensed, that is legitimate. I love fan props as well. There's so many great ones, sometimes better, a lot of times better, but I love having this licensed collector's piece as well. It's fairly sharp. The Valyrian steel website says, of course, this is not a weapon. This is a collector's piece. It's meant for hanging. It's meant for display, but it's not meant for sparring or dueling or anything like that. So I would highly advise you not to do that. It's decently sharp, but they've dulled it enough to the point where it's nothing too crazy. You're not going to cut someone in half with this. But I hope you don't try like Dewey Cox or something. But hopefully you guys get that reference. But yeah, this sword is legitimate, but it is a collector's display piece. There's only one issue I had with this sword, and it's so minor. Some people would have a major problem with it. I haven't had a major problem with it. It's been fine. And you won't even be able to see this on camera, which is why I haven't shown it in the video so far. There's a very tiny micro scratch right in here. So I believe it arrived this way because I haven't done anything with the sword besides hang it on a plaque and shoot this video with it, but it had the scratch pretty immediately. I can't even put my finger in it, so it's not embedded in the sword. It's not a real scratch. It's a very, very tiny scratch that you can only see under the right lighting conditions. And this is probably going to happen, honestly, if you're not very careful with your sword. To me, I don't mind it at all. It's something that, bothered me at first, but considering this is a sword and it has that gritty look anyway, it's a little bit polished, obviously, because I've oiled it down, but overall, I don't mind that little tiny micro scratch because it gives it a little bit of character. It's mine. I thought about returning it, but I was like, you know what? This is mine. It's my sword now. It's 1433. That's my Longclaw edition. The tiny scratch is part of it. Just own it. It's yours. Deal with it. We all have flaws. We all have issues. And this is a very small thing. And I learned to love it, actually. Now I kind of think it's cool. I mean, it has its own identity to its sword. So, yeah, it's not the biggest issue, but that is something. So hopefully you guys found value in this live demonstration. Like I mentioned, the goal here is just to kind of give you a sort of unboxing, so to speak, to give you a live look at the sword, to show you what it looks like in real time, instead of having a bunch of cuts and edits and those kind of things. I like to give you both. I like to give you sort of a collection sort of showpiece to give you different angles and lighting methods for showing the sword off, and then give you a live demonstration to show what it looks like in real time. So we'll get back to the rest of the video. Hopefully you guys found some value in this demonstration. And yeah, there's still some good stuff left for you guys. So enjoy, and thanks for watching. Okay, so I hope I provided you with all the information you need to make an informed decision about whether the Valyrian Steel Longclaw King in the North Edition is right for you. For myself, it was definitely the right prop for me. Jon Snow has always been tied with Jaime Lannister for my favorite character in Game of Thrones, and I knew I needed a Longclaw that I could marvel at in my collection. I think the price is fair for what you get considering the quality of the sword, the awesome plaque it comes with, and of course what it will mean to huge Jon Snow fans like myself. For me, this sword gets a 10 out of 10, even considering the slight issue with the micro scratch that may have happened prior to its arrival. Still, I'm very happy with the sword and I highly recommend you pick one up if you're considering it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Until then, this is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.